Hello, this is Morel Bernard with the continuation of the story, Dracula. Last words were, the man touched his hat, took his bag, put on his coat, and departed. Not a soul took the slightest notice of the whole transaction. And by the way, please subscribe to Study Coach UK channel, please. And please share. Thank you. I will proceed with the story of Dracula. When the man had fairly gone, we three crossed the street and knocked at the door. It was immediately opened by Quincy Morris, beside whom stood Lord Godalming, lighting a cigar. "The place smells so vilely," said the latter as we came in. It did indeed smell vilely, like the old chapel at Carfax, and with our precious experience it was plain to us that the Count had been using the place pretty freely. We moved to explore the house, all keeping together in case of attack, for we knew we had a strong and wily enemy to deal with, and as yet we did not know whether the Count might not be in the house. In the dining room, which lay at the back of the hall, we found 8 boxes of earth. 8 boxes only out of the 9, which we sought. Our work was not over, and would never be until we should have found the missing box. First we opened the shutters of the window, which looked out across a narrow stone-flagged yard at the blank face of a stable, pointed to look like the front of a miniature house. There were no windows in it, so we were not afraid of being overlooked. We did not lose any time in examining the chest. With the tools which we had brought with us, we opened them one by one, and treated them as we had treated those others in the old chapel. It was evident to us that the Count was not at present in the house, and we proceeded to search for any of his effects. After a curious glance at the rest of the rooms from basement to attic, we came to the conclusion that the dining room contained any effects which might belong to the Count, and so we proceeded to minutely examine them. They lay in a sort of orderly disorder on the great dining room table. There were title deeds of the Piccadilly house in a great bundle, deeds of the purchase of the houses at Mile End and Bermondsey, note paper, envelopes, and pens and ink. All were covered up in thin wrapping paper to keep them from the dust. There were also a clothes brush, a brush and comb, and a jug and basin, the latter containing dirty water, which was reddened as if with blood. Last of all was a little heap of keys of all sorts and sizes, probably those belonging to the other houses. When we had examined this last find, Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris, taking accurate notes of the various addresses of the houses in East and the South, took with them the keys in a great bunch, and set out to destroy the boxes in these places. The rest of us are, with what patience we can, waiting their return, or the coming of the Count. Dr. Seward's Diary, 3rd October. The time seemed terribly long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Godalming and Quincy Morris. The professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his beneficent purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow is overwhelmed in a misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was a frank, happy-looking man, with strong, youthful face, full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he's a drawn, haggard old man whose white hair matches well with the horror-burning eyes and grief-ridden lines of his face. His energy is still intact, in fact. He's like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for if all go well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake again to the realities of life. Poor fella. I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his. The professor knows this well enough and is doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was under the circumstances of absorbing interest. So well as I can remember, here it is. I have studied over and over again since they came into my hands all the papers relating to this monster. And the more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out. All through there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of his knowledge of it. As I learned from the researches of my friend Arminus of Budapest, he was in life a most wonderful man, soldier, statesman, and alchemist, which latter was the highest development of the science knowledge of his time. He had a mighty brain, a learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear and no remorse. He dared even to attend Scholomance, and there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him the brain powers survive the physical death, though it would seem that memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been and is only a child, but he's growing, and some things that were childish at the first are now of man's stature. He's experimenting and doing it well. And if it had not been that we have crossed his path, he would be yet, he may be yet, if we fail, a father or furtherer of a new order of beings, whose road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, and this is all arrayed against my darling. But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us to defeat him. He has all along, since his coming, been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well, for us, it is as yet a child brain, for had he dared at the first to attempt certain things, he would long ago have been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed. And a man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and to go slow. Festina lenta may well be his motto. But I fail to understand, said Harker wearily. Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain. The professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. Ah, my child, I will be plain. But do you not see how of late this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? How he has been making use of the zoophagous patient to effect his entry into friend John's home? For your vampire, though in all afterwards he can come when and how he will, must at the first make entry only when asked thereto by an inmate. But these are not his most important experiments. Do we not see how, at the first, all these so great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then but that must be so. But all the time that so great child brain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the box. So he began to help, and then, when he found that this be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progressed, and he scattered these graves of him, and none but he know where they are hidden. He may have intent to bury them deep in the ground, so that he only use them in the night, or at such time as he can change his form. They do him equal well, and none may know these are his hiding place. But my child, do not despair. This knowledge come to him just too late. Already, all of his liars but one be sterilized as for him, and before the sunset this shall be so. Then he have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning that so we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than for him? Then why we not be even more careful than that? By my clock, it is 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must go sure if slow, and lose no chance. See, there are 5 of us when those absent ones return. While he was speaking, we were startled by a knock at the hall door. The double postman's knock of the telegraph boy. We all moved out to the hall with one impulse, and Van Hessling, holding up his hand to us to keep silence, stepped to the door and opened it. The boy handed in a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and after looking at the direction, opened it and read aloud. Look out for D. He is just now, 12:45, come from Carfax hurriedly, and hastened towards the south. He seems to be going the round, and may want to see you. Mina. There was a pause, broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet. Van Hessling turned to him quickly and said, God will act his own way and time. Do not fear, and do not rejoice as yet. For what we wish for at the moment may be our undoings. I care for nothing now, he answered hotly, except to wipe out this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it. Oh, hush, 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 my child, said Van Hessling. God does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. But God is merciful and just, and knows your pain and your devotion to that dear Madame Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled did she but hear your wild words? Do not fear any of us. We are all devoted to this cause, and today shall see the end. The time is coming for action. Today, this vampire is the limit to the powers of man. Until sunset, he may not change. It will take him time to arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1, and there are yet some times before he can hither come, be he never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. About half an hour after we had received Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock at the hall door. It was just an ordinary knock, such as is given hourly by thousands of gentlemen, but it made the Professor's heart and mine beat loudly. We looked at each other, and together moved out into the hall. We each held ready to use our various armaments, the spiritual in the left hand, the mortal in the right. Van Heslin pulled back the latch, and holding the door half open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shone upon our faces when, on the step close to the door, we saw Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. They came quickly in and closed the door behind them, the former saying as they moved along the hall, "It is all right. We found both places, 6 boxes in each, and we destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" asked the Professor. "For him." We were silent for a minute, and then Quincy said, "There's nothing to do but to wait here. If, however, he doesn't turn up by 5 o'clock, we must start off, for it won't do to leave Mrs. Harker alone after sunset." "He will be here before long now," said Van Heslin, who had been consulting his pocketbook. "Nota bene, in Madame's telegram, he went south from Carfax. That means he went across the river, and he could only do so at slack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He is as yet only suspicious, and he went from Carfax first to the place where he would suspect interference least. You must have been at Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not here already shows that he went to Mile End next. This took him some time, for he would then have to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait now. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that we may throw away no chance. Hush, there's no time now. Have all your arms, be ready." He held up a warning hand as he spoke, for we all could hear a key softly inserted in the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures in different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance around the room, he at once laid out our plan of attack, and without speaking a word, with a gesture, placed us each in position. Van Heslin, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it was open, the Professor could guard it whilst we two stepped behind the incomer and the door. Godalming behind and Quincy in front stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in a suspense that made the seconds pass with nightmare slowness. The slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least he feared it. Suddenly, with a single bound, he leaped into the room, winning a way past us before any of us could raise a hand to stay him. There was something so panther-like in the movement, something so unhuman, that it seemed to sober us all from the shock of his coming. The first act was Harker, who with a quick movement threw himself before the door, leading into the room in front of the house. As the Count saw us, a horrible sort of snarl passed over his face, showing the eye teeth long and pointed, but the evil smile as quickly passed into a cold stare of lion-like disdain. His expression again changed as, with a single impulse, we all advanced upon him. It was a pity that we had not some better organized plan of attack, for even at the moment I wondered what we were to do. I did not myself know whether our lethal weapons would avail us anything. Harker evidently meant to try the matter, for he had ready his great curry knife and made a fierce and sudden cut at him. The blow was a powerful one. Only the diabolical quickness of the Count's leap back saved him. A second less, and the trenchant blade had shorn through his heart. As it was, the point just cut the cloth of his coat, making a wide gap whence a bundle of banknotes and a stream of gold fell out. The expression of the Count's face was so hellish that for a moment I feared for Harker, though I saw him throw the terrible knife aloft again for another stroke. Instinctively, I moved forward with a protective impulse, holding the crucifix and wafer in my left hand. I felt a mighty power fly along my arm, and it was without surprise that I saw the monster cower back before a similar movement made simultaneously by each one of us. It would be impossible to describe the expression of hate and baffled malignity, of anger and hellish rage which came over the Count's face. His waxen hue became greenish-yellow by the contrast of his burning eyes, and the red scar on the forehead showed on the pallid skin like a palpitating wound. The next instant, with a sinus dive, he swept under Harker's arm ere his blow could fall, and grasping a handful of the money from the floor, dashed across the room, threw himself at the window. Amid the crash and glitter of the falling glass, he tumbled into the flagged area below. Through the sound of the shivering glass, I could hear the ting of the gold as some of the sovereigns fell on the lagging. We ran over and saw him spring unheard from the ground. He, rushing up the steps, crossed the flagged yard and pushed open the stable door. Then he turned and spoke to us. "You think to baffle me, you, with your pale faces all in a row, like sheep in a butcher's. You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest. But I have more. My revenge is just begun. I spread it over centuries, and time is on my side. Your girls that you all love are mine already, and through them you and others shall yet be mine, my creatures, to do my bidding, and to be my jackals when I want to feed. Brr." With a contemptuous sneer, he passed quickly through the door, and we heard the rusty bolt creak as he fastened it behind him. A door beyond opened and shut. The first of us to speak was the professor, as realizing the difficulty of following him through the stable, we moved toward the hall. We have learnt something much, notwithstanding his brave words. He fears us. He fear time. He fear want. For if not, why he hurry so? His very tone betray him, or my ears deceive. Why take that money? You follow quick. You are hunters of wild beasts and understand it so. For me, I make sure that nothing here may be of use to him. If so, let he return. As he spoke, he put the money remaining into his pocket, took the title deeds and the bundle as Harker had left them, and swept the remaining things into the open fireplace, where he set fire to them with a match. Will you join me? Join me for the next video of Dracula. Join me, Morel Bernard, for the next video of Dracula. Coming soon. I'll see you then. Bye.